You look lovely tonight, he said smilingly, and then gave a little laugh. Much better, I may say, than you did last night. I could not say what it was, but there was something about this crowded, safe place that made me infinitely more afraid of him than I had been in the blackness of the woods. Unmasked, he seemed a bit ridiculous. Masked, he was a monster. Thank you, I said quietly. Will you excuse me? I was on my way upstairs. Of course. I wouldn't dream in standing in the way of your good time. By all means. He gestured toward the doors, and I started away, only he spoke once more. Oh, Miss Blackwood. I turned back reluctantly. Yes? If you should see Timothy tonight. I won't, I said a little forcefully. He smiled indulgently. Never mind. I was going to ask you to pass on a message for me, but I think I'll tell him myself soon enough. Don't hold your breath, I said, conscious that I was drawing attention. If Timothy is dancing tonight, I'm afraid it's far, far away from this place. Oh, he answered, is that so? Far away, you say? I turned quickly before he could see the cold sweat on my brow. Had someone whispered the truth about Timothy's location? Some servant? Was that why there were so many soldiers here tonight in disguise? People were passing me, but they all seemed like blurs. My mind was top floor above in the little windowless room where Timothy would be listening to the muffled strain of the music. Suddenly I thought of 1,000 other places where Timothy might have hidden instead of in his very own home. Oh, why was he here? What sense did it make to hide in the first place that everyone would suspect? Staying here was sheer madness. I dashed up the stairs and went straight for Marissa's room. It would be quiet there, and I needed somewhere quiet, where I could calm my nerves before returning to the ball. The room was cold and dark, no fire having been lit. In the moonlight I could see the pale pink wallpaper and the matching chintz bedspread. The carpet was thick under my feet as I paced back and forth across the room. I was furious with myself for letting myself get so upset just now. But even more, I was furious with Timothy. How dare he put himself in danger like this, and how dare he kiss me last night and then send no message to me today? Doubly guilty of selfishness. The fragile sound of the little gold clock on Marissa's dressing table mocked my ears. It would have been impossible to explain to anyone how desperately I wanted time to stand still. I wanted nothing more than to flee up the stairs and find Timothy. That would answer all my problems. I could warn him of George and aged insults, while at the same time rake him over for neglecting to tell me whether he intended to marry me or not. I was in this temper of mind when the door opened. The light of the hall slid across the floor in one long rectangle, except for the shadow of the masked woman whom I had no trouble recognizing, mostly because she was my sister and I had helped her dress. Lisbette, Jane asked, are you in here? Yes, I said irritably. She quickly closed the door behind her. Is something wrong? Aunt Geraldine is sure you're mingling with libertines and card sharps, but if you ask me, I think that you must still have your headache. I had come home from my little adventure last night and promptly gone to bed, where I'd stayed until 3 in the afternoon pleading a headache, which by then was only too real. Maybe someday I'd tell Jane about my adventure in the evening before, but not until this mess was long behind us. However, now that she mentioned it, I realized I was feeling ill again. If only I could go home, I said, sitting down on the little stool in front of the giant mirror and tossing my mask to the floor. She put her hand to my head. You do feel a little warm. Perhaps you should lie down until it's time to go. Fiddlesticks, I said with as much cursing gusto as I could summon. Lying down is the last thing I could do right now. I know, she said, fetching my mask and returning it to me. I'm sorry, Lisbette. What are you sorry for? I'm sorry that he's not here. I turned to the mirror and put my mask back on, and it struck me that George had been right. I did have a pout. Well, I'm not sorry. If he had had anything to say to me, he would have said it before this evening. You're a stubborn idiot. The least you could do is to be honest with me, your own sister. Do you think I'm blind? You haven't been the same person since you got home from Ottleton. Why don't you just admit it? You could extend the contract right here and now if only you'd say something to Sir John Robert. It's a perfectly legitimate request under the circumstances. No, I said a little too emphatically. I would never sink to marrying a man who didn't love me in return. Jane clasped her hands. Then you do want to marry him, Lisbette? I thought you were just being proud. How long have you actually been in love with him? I'm not in love, I said, trying to find my handkerchief, only it wasn't there. She pulled out her handkerchief and handed it to me. You think you're such a good liar, she said gently, but anyone can see that you've been fidgety as a mother hen these past 2 days. I thought it was the last money. But now I see how things really are. I never thought I'd see the day when you'd get a taste of your own medicine. What is that supposed to mean? I said, choking on a little sob. You never did see how many hearts you were breaking. Stuff and nonsense, I said, dabbing my nose and leaning closer to the mirror to see if my eyes were puffy. I happen to be an extrovert, that's all. She snorted. I'm not sure that's the word I would have used. I turned. Do I look all right? No one will guess that you've been crying. You know I never cry, I said, still examining my reflection. Jane turned and inspected her reflection as well. She gave a little sigh. I admit I had my own reasons to hope that tonight might be more pleasant, but it doesn't look as if anyone in our family is going to have a good evening. Maybe Anne is right. Maybe we are all doomed to be old maids. Not you. If I'm any judge, you'll be happily engaged long before I am. Hardly, she said gloomily. Outside we heard the sound of distant thunder. Even if John did propose, it wouldn't do any good. Not as long as Uncle William has anything to say about it. With this unhappy premonition, we straightened our hair, smoothed our dresses, and left the seclusion of Marissa's room. Outside in the corridor, in the light of the candles, I could see that there were tears in my sister's eyes. Now, I said, feeling my own eyes brim over once more. I can't take you downstairs if you're crying. What are people going to say? Jane gave a bit of a gasp. Lisbette, someone's in Timothy's room. Sure enough, there were distinct sounds of drawers opening and closing in the room across from us. Suddenly I felt enough hot anger to make my tears evaporate. Will those soldiers never stop? Quick, let's go downstairs and tell Sir John Robert, Jane said, pulling me away. But I refused to budge. I'm going in there and give them a piece of my mind. Before I had the chance, however, the door opened from the inside. How dare you go in that room, I demanded. But the man that stood in the doorway was no soldier. There, dressed in a coat of superfine with a pale blue vest and a gold pin in his cravat, was Timothy himself.